I hope they won't mind if I mention in particular 2 nurses who stood by my bedside for 48 hours when things could have gone either way. They're Jenny from New Zealand, Invercargill on the South Island to be exact, and Luis from Portugal near Porto. And the reason in the end my body did start to get enough oxygen was because for every second of the night, they were watching and they were thinking and they were caring and making the interventions I needed.
2 foreign nurses getting a special mention there. One of the doctors treating Johnson is reported to have been an Italian. Let's speak to Christopher Desira, human rights and immigration solicitor in London. Christopher, thank you for joining us. Look, we can look at this as an emotive subject and a factual one, of course. I'd like to start, if you don't mind, with your gut feeling. At a time like this, for the British government to be stressing again that in a few months, some who have worked so hard to keep us, members of the British public, alive, that they'll no longer be able to work in the UK. How would you describe that?
Well, good evening. It's probably not the right time to reiterate this announcement. As you say, the whole nation is relying on key workers at the moment to get us through this crisis. And so for the UK government to publish its policy on its future immigration system, reiterating that low-skilled workers will not be able to apply for visas from the 1st of January 2021 is probably not the right time to do this.
The fight against COVID-19 is often, for these healthcare workers, a matter of life or death. At least, according to the government, 19 have died. Others say that figure is probably double. It's proven how critical the NHS is to this country. So how does it make any sense to have a points-based system for work in the health sector? How is the government going to fill the gaps by those who leave?
Well, this question was put to the government by a number of groups, including ourselves. And the government's response is that they believe that the gaps can be plugged by British nationals, and then second of all, by family members of European citizens. So they expect these gaps to be plugged by people that are already here. We don't know any data on how they've figured that out. We don't know the qualifications of the people here. We don't know whether they're experienced enough to plug these gaps. So at the moment, I think it just appears speculation that these gaps will be plugged from the 1st of January.
Yeah, being a nurse is quite clearly a specialist profession. I suppose it's easier. Well, obviously it's easier, isn't it, Christopher, to train someone to make a good cup of coffee. So away from the NHS, what are the sectors that are going to be hit the worst and affected more negatively than others?
Well, first of all, we've got what we call now key workers who previously were referred to as low-skilled workers. So you're going to have sectors like nursing, care workers, hospital porters, cleaners, logistical personnel, postal workers, all going to be hit by this. And then you've got other categories like agricultural workers, hospitality, hotels, restaurants. It's going to be all of those jobs that are going to be hit the hardest. And those jobs are usually filled quite quickly now because the UK, during a transition period, can continue to rely on free movement from Europe. So what happens is usually the younger Europeans come here, plug those lower skilled jobs while they're studying or upskilling, and then they move on to set up businesses or to take higher paid jobs. All of those industries are going to be hit if the government maintains this course to prevent low-skilled workers coming to the UK from next year.
What have the past few years been like in terms of EU nationals who had come here to make a living and choosing or not to go home? And what do you think is going to happen in the future? And I'm just wondering if the government's policies are going to be ad hoc in terms of loosening some restrictions because they realise they can't fill the gap with British nationals and then reimposing restrictions when certain sectors are full. If it's going to be ad hoc, that's certainly not going to bring people back because they'll be discouraged that they don't know the situation from one day to the next almost.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, for the last couple of years, our law firm has been working with the European Union in the UK. And so we've had close contact with European citizens from all across the country. And there's been a range of feelings. There's been some people who take this pragmatically and know the UK's leaving, and so they'll register their resident status here. Some have felt very let down and decided to leave the UK. Some are also still waiting to see what happens during this transition period. But you're right. There's going to be a rapid drop of the number of European citizens coming here, and already has been. There's been plenty of people who've made the decision to go back home, and plenty of people who have chosen not to come here now that they see that the UK has left the European Union. And that will continue to happen because if, say, for example, you're a French national and you've got the choice of 26 other countries to move to easily without any bureaucratic hurdles or without applying for a visa, why would you choose to come to the UK when you have to apply for a visa to come to the UK? You'll have to pay visa fees. You may potentially have to pay surcharges into the NHS, and you have no guarantee that you're going to be granted this visa, or no guarantee you'll be able to stay here permanently. So the choice, if it was me, would be I would move somewhere else in Europe because it's much easier to do so.
Christopher, appreciate your time. Christopher Desira, Human Rights and Immigration Solicitor here in London.